If you have your Bible with you, go ahead and open up to Acts chapter 13. That's where we're going to be. We're going to be moving pretty quickly through Acts chapter 13 through 14, just hitting a couple spaces. I don't know if you remember this with me, but there's a couple years ago, we almost ran out of toilet paper across the world. Y'all remember that? It was crazy, right? I mean, everybody started making their way towards Walmart or Publix, wherever you do your grocery shopping, and man, everybody was going after it. It seemed like it was Black Friday. Some of y'all are crazy enough to do some shopping on Black Friday. I only watch those videos of those ladies that throw elbows for Legos. You know, it's crazy. They're trying to get whatever they can for the good of their children and for the good of Christmas, right? Because that's what Christmas is all about. I think of, if I was ever there on a Black Friday shopping, I would think, like, I just imagine this lady who would say, hey, I want you to meet my friend. I have Mary over here and Christmas over here. And then boom, boom, and I'm knocked out because I don't care that much, as much as my kids do, about Legos. But the thing is, when news is breaking, everybody responds differently. It could be political news, could be sports news, could be all kinds of different news. Everybody responds. Some people lean in and they want to give in to all the rabbit trail. They want to follow it to the very end because they want to know the truth. And some of us, we just really don't care. Just kind of continue to move on. Well, we find that as Paul and Barnabas are making their way, sharing this breaking news that not only has the Messiah come, but he has been crucified, was buried, and raised. This is breaking news. We find that a lot of people respond differently. Let me ask you, as we're starting this passage this morning, as we start this time together, how are you responding to the news that Jesus has arose from the dead? What's your life look like in light of that breaking news? So we find as soon as Jesus arose again, there was 400 people that saw him. They looked at him. They saw the actions, his actions. They heard him speak, all of these different things. And then afterwards, he had told them when he ascended into heaven, he actually already told them, you're going to be my witnesses from Jerusalem to the ends of the earth. So where the story picks up for us is that Paul and Barnabas are leaving the church of Antioch, and they're beginning on their very first missionary journey. And so starting in verse 7, they run into their first group of people, one individual specified. He was with the proconsul, Sergius Paulus, a man of intelligence who summoned Barnabas and Saul and sought to hear the word of God. What we find about Sergius Paulus is he is a high-ranking governor. He's educated and intellectual. He's also an individual who can make a decision, and all of these folks who live in the area where he is ruling over, their lives are impacted and changed. But upon hearing this news about Christ, it's not just like he's in this room full of advisors who would tell him and give him advice on how to make this next decision that he's making. No, it's not something that he has to do. The news about Jesus is about what has already been done for him. And so he leans in. That's our point number one. Some lean in to listen. As we move on into verse 15, we see that Paul and Barnabas goes to another space, another area, a Jewish synagogue. They open up the scriptures. Paul reads from it, some Old Testament scriptures there. And upon it, we hear this. They say, brothers, if you have any word of encouragement for the people, say it. They want to know more and more. So he goes on for 30 verses. He shares about what Christ has done. And that's a little bit of what Pastor John has already done earlier in the service. But it picks up in verse 42. Here's their response. As they went out, the people begged that these things might be told them the next Sabbath. And after the meeting of the synagogue broke up, many Jews and devout converts to Judaism, what were they doing? Well, they followed Paul and Barnabas, who, as they spoke with them, urged them to continue in the grace of God. These people wouldn't leave them alone. They continued, and wherever they went, they continued with them to hear more and more, because a lot of us, when we hear the news about Jesus, it causes us to want to lean in and listen. We may have questions that we want answers for. All of us are leaning in specific directions, though, aren't we, in life? A lot of times it's whatever brings you purpose, whatever brings you meaning, whatever brings you joy. Sometimes it could be a book, and you think, man, if I can just learn a little bit more here, I'm going to be more successful in my job. I'm going to be a better leader. For some of us, if we lean in and spend more time here, if we do this or that, we think that we can get ahead, and it's going to give us more purpose in life. We're going to be successful. And Sergius Paulus is a guy that's already climbed the ranks, really. He's already proven himself. But you know what? Is that a lot of times learning and intellectual, trying to figure things out, it doesn't always lead to joy. King Solomon even said, the more your knowledge increases, sometimes even your sorrow increases all the more. And you know what? More success doesn't help you get to sleep at night any better. Sometimes it's just more stress. And so these individuals are leaning in. What about you? Are you leaning in this morning? Point number 2, some people don't lean in when they hear the news of Christ. They push back with different motives. They push back. So when Sergius Paulus hears about this news, there's another man that's around him that has influence in his life. We're introduced to him in verse 6 and verse 8 of chapter 13. It says this, when they had gone through the whole island, as far as Paphos, they came upon a certain magician, a Jewish false prophet named Bar-Jesus. He also had another name, though, in verse 8. But Elymas, the magician, for that is the meaning of his name, opposed Saul and Barnabas, seeking to turn Sergius Paulus, the proconsul, away from the faith. Some people push back once they hear the news. One motivation might be because they're spiritually tricked. You know, Bar-Jesus, this otherwise known as this magician, it's not just that there's this conference going on and there's this special event that everybody wants to come to see this guy do some card tricks. No, this guy is practicing black magic, which happens across the United States today. There was a report done last October, 2024, where 30% of U.S. adults report consulting astrology, tarot cards, or a fortune teller at least once a year. After the post-pandemic, the industry has grown over 4% annually. It continues to grow. You just go into Barnes & Noble and you can find that out. You go to these spiritual areas, and what you'll find is that there's probably less Bibles on the shelf, and there's more of these witchcraft books. It's called Wiccan. I remember running into a person that had been involved in Wiccan when I went to college, and she grew up in Arizona. She would tell folks, like, as a teenager, that she was a witch, but somebody had shared the gospel, and it set her free. Some people, though, are still tricked to this day. I remember, even as a 13-year-old, going over to my friend's house, and they break out a Ouija board, which still can be purchased at any Walmart, all these other places. And all of that stuff, a lot of times you think that it may not be that bad, that we're just playing a game here. But there's much more going on than just playing a game. There's true powers out there that you can try to manipulate and gain a footing and try to succeed in certain areas. But I promise you this, in the very end, you will have judgment coming your way. This is not just a fun game to be played, but you're doing something that Deuteronomy chapter 18 and also Acts 13 tells us, that this is looking to try to gain insight and control over certain things in life that can lead to judgment. It's against the Lord. Some push back, though, because not just being spiritually tricked, but also being wounded through just experience. This man was a Jewish false prophet. And so he was telling everybody, hey man, I've got authority. God is speaking to me, therefore you should listen. And as soon as somebody begins to make that claim to you, you need to be very careful, very, very careful, especially if they're not going through the text of what we're doing today. But what happens is this person, they usurp the authority of God, and therefore they end up pushing their authority on other individuals. Many of you have experienced people mishandling the authority that God has given to them. And I want to apologize for that, because all of us in the room, for most of us, if you've done life long enough in the church, you've been hurt. People make comments, people make statements. People have facial expressions, and it's very easy to take them wrong, but also sometimes it's even being dished from a heart not of love and grace. But sometimes you've experienced people mishandling authority within your family. It could be that it's a father or a mother or maybe an uncle and aunt that's mishandled the authority that God has given to them, and they've manipulated you or they've caused you to be hurt. And if that's the case, what I want to welcome you into is maybe you're pushing back against those certain individuals and you need space from them. But I want to be honest and say this, that Jesus is not that same individual for you. Don't push back against him thinking, well, you're in control. You're the one that made it happen. Man, you ought to welcome him in because he never mishandles the authority that his Father has given to him. Also, some people push back, not just because of being spiritually tricked or being wounded, but also because their own authority is being challenged. And this is what's going on within this passage with Elymas, this magician. He's afraid that all of these folks, especially Sergius Paulus, who might be giving him some money on the side, he's beginning to move towards Barnabas and Saul, receiving his own philosophy or his own faith. This kind of goes a little bit further, though. In chapter 13, verse 45, Paul and Barnabas, they run into another group of folks. It says, but when the Jews, but also this can be translated Jewish leaders, saw the crowds, they were filled with jealousy. There was tons of people gathering around Paul and Barnabas because of the message, the breaking news about Jesus, and they were filled with jealousy, this burning rivalry that we have, sometimes expressed in sports. You got to watch out, right? But man, when it talks about spiritual matters and influence and authority, people get extremely upset, going as far as to begin to contradict what Paul and Barnabas was saying, but also reviling them, tearing them to shreds with their words. It even breaks out in hostile division in chapter 14, verse 1. When they go to another city, the folks respond like this. Now at Iconium, they entered together into the Jewish synagogue and spoke in such a way that a great number of both Jews and Gentiles, or Greeks, believed. Verse 2, but the unbelieving Jews, what do? They stirred up the Gentiles. They began to poison their minds against their brothers. Verse 3, so they remained for a long time, talking about Paul and Barnabas, speaking boldly for the Lord, who bore witness to the word of his grace, granting signs and wonders to be done by their hands. But the people of the city were divided. Some of them sided with the Jews and some with the apostles. You know, Jesus, at one point, he said that he didn't bring peace. He brought a sword. What's he talking about there? Brought a sword. Not a physical sword, because he told his disciples, those who live by the sword will also die by the sword. But he did bring a spiritual sword. What happens is that he said that maybe there's going to be some kids that's in a family that's going to decide to follow Christ, and their mother and their father will be against them. Or it's vice versa. Maybe the mother and father decide to leave the Jewish faith or to leave whatever background they have in order to follow Christ, and then all of the community around them is going to bring some sort of persecution that could take place. Where are you at? Some lean in, some push back, because the gospel, a lot of times when it's spoken, it either compels people to follow Christ or it repels them in a different direction, and they want nothing to do with him. But there's also this third point. Some cook it in their own way. They cook it their own way. We see it in Acts chapter 14, verse 8 through 18. They end up coming to another city called Lystra. They're preaching the gospel to a group of Greeks. These are pagan people. They believe in multiple gods. And what Paul does is he heals this crippled man. And they see this miracle, so they decide to take their former experience and kind of run it through the filter of who Jesus truly is. This is how they do it. Verse 11, chapter 14. When the crowd saw what Paul had done, they lifted up their voices, saying in Lycaonian, "The gods have come down to us in the likeness of men." Barnabas they called Zeus, and Paul Hermes, because he was the chief speaker. And the priest of Zeus, whose temple was at the entrance to the city, brought oxen and garlands to the gates and wanted to offer sacrifice with the crowds. So Zeus in Greek mythology was basically the all-powerful god. Hermes was the eloquent speaker. So what you would find is Paul was probably doing a lot of the communication here, sharing the good news. And then they attributed Zeus to be Barnabas. So they were beginning to bring all their cattle out. Man, this was a huge ordeal. In their minds, what we have been worshiping all of our lives has come true. Zeus and Hermes has come down, and they are among us, even performing miracles. You know, we do this, though. We think some people are crazy because they bow in front of idols. But we do it really on a regular basis. Maybe it's not a physical object that's in your car or a physical object that's in your house that you really literally get down on your knees and light a candle and pray to. But a lot of these things that we give our time and our energy and our resources and our passions, a lot of times we're more passionate about other things than we are Christ. And it's easy to see it because all you have to do is open your mouth and people listen. They hear you talk about the things you love the most. And so you might not be saying, you know, like them, the gods have come down to us in the likeness of men. But by the way that we spend our time, we are saying, oh, this God, I really like this because it really makes me feel good over here. So I'm gonna go spend time and resources here. I'm gonna go over here and do the same thing. You know, some of us, we mix Jesus in with our own recipe of life. See, some folks, they want a comfort food kind of Jesus. You know what a comfort food Jesus is? One that comforts you but never confronts you. Some of y'all haven't been convicted over your sin in a long time. You know why? Because you're serving a comfort food kind of Jesus. There ought to be conviction that comes upon our life. You know how often? Every day. Every day. How we get up in the morning. What does it look like to offer the Lord the first fruits of the day? What's it look like to give him the last fruits of my day when I lay my head down at night? What's it look like to serve the Lord, to worship him, not just through song, but through what Paul said in Romans 12:1, I beseech you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy unto the Lord, which is your reasonable service. It's a spiritual worship. Some of us, we love the comfort food kind of Jesus. Others, we want a spicy political Jesus who always takes our side. We think, man, every time we open our mouth about this issue or this issue, we always think Jesus is right behind us. It's like, you're behind me, right? You got me. We think he's cheering us on as we're blasting other people away because of our political or other perspectives in life. It could range from not just about Republican or Democrat, but it could be all sorts of different things that really matter to you. Do you have a Jesus that agrees with you on everything? Because more than likely, you got the wrong one. You got the wrong one. Do I think that in every single perspective that I have that Jesus is right beside me, like saying, hey, thumbs up? No, there's some things that I really, really possibly even believe that could be wrong, that I haven't figured out yet. Some people want a comfort food Jesus. Some people love the spicy political Jesus, but others of us, we drink a smoothie kind of Jesus every day because we just mix them together. But let me tell you, Jesus does not welcome us to make a potluck out of him, even though Baptists love potlucks, right? He does not welcome a potluck kind of thing. You can't have a section of Jesus and not receive the other. You know how I hear this a lot of times? It's through when people say, well, I asked Jesus into my heart. And I know that is a common phrase across spiritual circles. I know it is. But you know, Jesus never asked us to just pray a prayer. He didn't ask us to really ask me into your heart, like this little Jesus comes down and lives in this space. Even though the Spirit of God does indwell believers, you know what he asked for us to do? He said, if you want to follow me, catch this. You want to follow me? You want to be a Christ follower? Deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow me. You want to do it? You want to call yourself a Christian? Because some go all in with Jesus. That's our fourth point. Who's going all in? When I saw this passage, I looked over these chapters, it's really Saul and Barnabas that's highlighted for me. Because some people believe, some people don't. There's divided groups of people. They're thinking all sorts of different things. But really, when you look at Saul and Barnabas, these guys are for real. So much so that they end up taking these big stones and they throw them and pelt Apostle Paul until they think he's dead. They drag him out of the city and leave him. They think he is dead, y'all, but he ends up getting back up. And you know when he comes back to the church, what does he say? Does he tell everybody, hey guys, man, listen, you don't want to go be bold in your faith because this is what's going to happen to me. This is the same thing that happened to me is going to happen to you. He didn't say, hey, guard your kids, guard yourself, guard, man, we ought to be quiet at least for a little time and let this die down. You know what he ended up saying? Chapter 14, verse 22, he said, through many tribulations, we must enter the kingdom of God. There's going to be trouble, my friends. There's going to be trouble. And it may not be persecution. Some of us, that might be the case. Some of you, you may lose your job because you're a bold witness living by the power of the Spirit of Christ. And he tells you, lean in, my friend. Lean in further than that. Go all in. And tell a coworker about Christ and you lose your job. There could be persecution coming around, but I'll tell you this much. All of us, there's a roaring lion seeking whom he can devour. And a lot of us, he's eaten our lunch. He is eating our lunch. He's deceived us into thinking that Christianity is a Sunday thing or a Wednesday thing. When he has asked for our entire lives, our full devotion. And listen, if he doesn't get everything, then you get nothing. Do you understand that? Do you understand that? This is a hard message for all of us. It is. But I think so much of our lives, we a lot of times think, and I'm not asking you to be perfect because I'm far from it. But at the same time, the Lord is the Lord over all of our life. Let me ask you something. Who's leaning in this morning? Who's pushing back? Who's being the ones that's cooking it up like that potluck kind of Jesus? Or who wants the real deal? Go all in with Christ. You know why we go all in with Christ? It's because he went all in for us. Even when we were sinners. You know, the truth of the matter is that all of us have cooked him up. All of us have only leaned in. All of us have pushed back and said, I don't want Christ. You know how I know that? Because that's the kid that I was. I didn't want Jesus to rule over my life. I wanted to do things my own ways. And so I just cooked him. I cooked him and cooked him and cooked him my high school career. So much that I had a friend that was an atheist that told me, he asked me my senior year, he said, are you going to live like a Christian or are you going to live like me? And I know what it's like to cook him and to treat his blood like it's nothing and to trample it over in the book of Hebrews. But I'm telling you this, Jesus is coming back. And some of us, we need to be excited about it. But some of us, we need to check yourself before you wreck yourself. You need to realize, do you have the real deal? Do you have him? Because he doesn't just want part of you. He wants all of us. He wants all of us. As the band comes up, I'd like to just ask you to stand and let's pray.